there were some rule changes, Tina, from a year ago, and did they make an impact? I don't know, Tina. What you got? What you got?
I think it kind of depends. I think let's just start with the kick returns because that seems to be the one that people just really didn't get behind it and they didn't
Yeah.
like it and they didn't think it made any difference, et cetera, et cetera. Um, we talked when they were talking about this, you and I talked about it. Like this rule change really wasn't about they claimed it was going to make the game more dynamic and everything. That's not really why it was being done. It was for safety reasons
Yeah.
because
Yep.
people were more likely to be seriously injured on a kickoff return because of how far away they were running and then smashing into each other. So that was
The
the
wedge.
point. And everybody knows like if it got kicked into the end zone, it came back to the 30, which is
Hmm.
what you got previously and went to the 30.
Hmm.
So you didn't see that many balls going in what they called the landing zone.
Right.
Now there were a couple on my team, Mr. Mims, that there were a couple of teams that were able to figure that out and figure out
Hmm.
how to make that special team get their special teams to kind of have some returns and have some huge gains in yardages. But overall, the opinion I think of the people was that it didn't make that much of a difference. However, according to the NFL, uh, kick returns, like actual returns,
Hmm.
jumped from 22% in 2023 to 33% in 2024.
Yep.
So a third, every third one was getting returned.
Hmm.
So it did create some difference. But this is one thing that I said about it during the thing is like 30 is nothing. That's not a real penalty for not taking it into the end zone. If
Right.
you're going to want to make them drop it in that landing zone, you got to make that end zone hurt. Like make it so you don't want to have it come forward. So they're talking about bringing it up to the 35 this year. My
Hmm.
personal opinion is it should be 40 or 45.
Oof. Good. God. Hey, well, that would prove the point because then people would definitely make sure they got the kicks either deep in the end zone or figure it out.
Right.
Yeah. That.
And
Woof.
right now, because for years it wasn't about positional kicks, it was about big legs and getting it into the end zone so
Right. Right.
nobody could return it. Or the big leg, if it when it hit, it would bounce and do things, so it was
Hmm.
hard to return. So they got all these kickers with these big, huge legs and everything who can't really, they're not able to place it right there, like
Right.
in that area, at least not all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, make it hurt, make it 40 yards. And then your big legs are going to have to figure out where to put it,
Right.
or you're going to bring somebody else. You've got to make it hurt to keep it that way. Now, I don't know
Yeah.
that they'll do that. I think 35 is what they're saying. And I think that's probably a good, if this rule is only going to be enough, it's only a 1 year rule every time they do
Hmm.
it. So it's going
Hmm.
to be reviewed the next year.
Yeah. And it should be.
Interesting little tidbit, not to go
Hmm.
back to my team but I will, is the guy who helped bring about this rule change, Darren Spritz, I forget his name, who
Who's
was it? Uh, no, the head coach. He was the head coach at the Saints. Oh, what's his name?
Rich, yeah, Rizzy, Ritz, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Rizzy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's the one that helped bring about this change
Mm.
in for special teams and the kickoffs. He's now our
Wow.
special team coordinator, assistant head coach.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Let me actually see. Okay, I don't have the clip. I
Yeah.
had a clip up from the season when he was with the Saints, and apparently, I don't know if you see the clip, Tina, where his punter he
Yeah.
told his punter to kick it out of bounds or something, and the punter didn't do it. And he came, and he was the interim coach, and he came off that sideline, and he tore a new one so much so that Kamara had to be like, "Hey man, we on TV, man. Come on, just walk away, just walk away." So Rizzy's fired up. So that's a good
Yeah.
move for y'all.
Yeah. Well, he came up with this and it was a safety issue. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's the thing with special teams. Like people don't realize like how punishing that could be. And you could really get
Yes.
injured on that stuff. So I can see why they also said that while it was only like an 11% increase in kickoff returns,
Mhm.
it dropped the injuries
Which is
drastically,
huge.
which is what they
Exactly.
were going for.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lead it off to you because you and
Mhm.
I had a long conversation about some of this, but
Mm.
how about the hip drop tackles?
This to me is crazy. Real quick to put a bow on the last part, there was 7 returns this past year
Yep.
of kick returns. So, it's a little slight increase, but I mean, we'll see how it plays. But yeah, this was something that there was a lot of fuss made about this last year coming into this year, and something to like with the kickoff, they were trying to limit, tackles, especially leg injuries, and it was like kind of like that hip drop and gator roll where they kind of spun them around and got the legs all tangled up and whatnot. But if I'm not mistaken, Tina, and you and I were talking about this, I don't remember. I really don't remember it ever being. I mean, maybe it was called. I think the article you sent said it was called two or three once. One person was fine. Yeah, yeah. But it really wasn't ever used. It wasn't ever called as much. Now
Yeah, it was. It
maybe that's
was.
because it was called a lot. Was it? Oh.
Here's the situation, and I had to read some stuff about this, and so it was called once in a game,
Mhm.
and it was. I'm looking for his name real quick. It was called against Carolina, and it was for a 15-yard penalty. And Widman is the only person who was called for it in a game. What had happened, and this was kind of under the table, unless you were reading like referee websites or something, you
Yeah.
would know this.
Yeah.
There's 4 parts to the hip drop tackle, which are
Ah.
hard to see in a game with
Yeah.
the game speed going.
Yeah.
So what it was is that the NFL was reviewing the tapes and then fining people after the game for it.
Fact. Wow. See.
So it was one of those that, like, if you've got 4 pieces to something of a rule change, you can't see that all the time.
Hmm.
And they
Especially not
literally
fast paced.
said when they were talking to the refs, like, this is a difficult one. You have to be positive in the game of
Yeah.
that they're doing exactly what we want.
Mhm.
So if you don't call it, it's not going to hurt your scores.
Okay. Okay.
So it was something, as we know, the NFL can review all the tapes, and so they were finding people
Yeah.
post.
So how many? So there was only one though called throughout the season,
Mhm.
and then but you said
But
there
he
was
didn't
two
get
that were called
fined.
after the fact. Oh,
They
okay.
when they went that was there's an article, and if people want to see it, I'll let you see it. Like, they called
Hmm.
it, and then they ended up not finding him because
Wow.
when they reviewed the tape, it really wasn't a hip drop tackle.
Wow. That's interesting.
So
See, and
this
that's
is
the part.
one that I think they're still going to do it for safety reasons. It's just
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
going to see it called in a game. So if you look at it and you go at it and you say that was a hip drop tackle, look and see later, because I bet you anything that person probably got fined by the NFL later.
Yeah, and I think that what you said that was key is that it's 4 different parts to it
Yeah.
because a lot of this is upon interpretation, just like any other penalty on the
Hmm.
field. But the fact that they're going back and they're looking at it and then reviewing it, and then now that see that's the part that's kind of a little messed up to me because it's like, well, if this happens in the game, I mean, that could be a huge penalty, 15 yards. I mean,
Okay, so if you have this situation, like the reason this came up is because the one guy's ankle got broken
yeah,
with a hip
yeah,
drop tackle. Okay, that's automatically a situation like that where you see it happen in somebody rolls or does something. I think those will be called. That didn't happen in any of the games because they told the teams that they were going to focus on this, so the
mm,
teams were preparing their people. Now,
ah, okay,
and remember, like we talked about it, like
education,
education, so they were looking into it. It's degrees, like how far are your hips falling, things like that. That is not a subjective, that's not an objective thing. It's
right?
different for different people. And so that's why it I'm not sure about it. Again, it's a safety. It's a safety call.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they realized, which kind of will cue into a conversation we'll have later. If they're saying this is too difficult of a call to make in a game, there's a lot of factors that go into a roughing the passer call.
There it is. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Roughing the passer. Yeah. Pass interference. You know what I mean? There's a
yeah,
number of these, and look, a lot of it, and we'll talk about this too, is the fact that a lot of these things are, like you said, by sight, by somebody's interpretation of what it is. So it could either be good, it could be not. We don't know. And one of the problems that people are having is humans miss calls. I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So
yeah,
what? Another thing we're going to talk about, not today, but we're going to talk about a little bit later, is the first down. They're trying to implement like a virtual first down marker, and if any of you watched games on TV, you've seen them have that, the imaginary line that's there, the yellow line, and they will always say this line isn't 100% accurate,
right.
and then you're still relying on the eye of the humans and all the, mind you, we had what, 7 or 8 officials there all trying to look, but it's almost impossible to get every single one
Mhm.
on, because you can't, the human eye can't see a lot of that stuff, especially when it's all up in a pile and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
especially when you're dealing with game time, with the
yeah,
speed and everything that's going on. Like, how many times have we
exactly.
looked at something and said, "Oh, that was a helmet to helmet hit," and you see it in slow time, and it wasn't helmet to helmet, it was here, but the force of
Right.
the tackle snaps it and makes them look like it's helmet to helmet. So
Yep.
there's a lot. That's so when I read that thing about how like it's more of a post game thing and they're fining not doing it in the game, then it made sense why we were seeing the numbers that we were seeing.
Oh yeah.
So the last thing, let's talk about onside kicks
Or the lack thereof,
and the
because is
fact
this
that
even
you
a
have to
thing?
call it. It can only be in the fourth quarter, and you have to call it ahead of time. And okay, everybody's like, "Oh, it takes out the surprise." I You had that stat earlier about 7
Yeah,
kick
kick
returns. There
returns.
was more
Hmm.
than that. That's the onside kick. I think that's the onside kick stat. I think last year only 6 or 7 onside kicks actually. Like the year before, it was
Hmm.
only like a 6% success rate. But I could be wrong about how many kick returns. Were you talking about going for a touchdown?
Yeah, return touchdowns.
Okay, then yeah, that's correct. But last year, the year in 2023, onside kicks only had a 6% success rate.
That's crazy.
Because
Well,
let's
normal.
think about this. The
Yeah.
surprise is done as soon as you see the kicking team line up
Hmm.
in those situations. As soon as you see them straight across, you know they're going for an onside kick. Everybody knows you're going for an onside kick. There's no
The only way,
surprise in it.
well, yeah, and the only way that teams were ever able to really, if able to really surprise, because even back then, when they knew, like you said, when they move over, everybody knows what's going on. The only way they were able to surprise is sometimes they lined up straight, and then you see the kicker kind of run up to it
Mhm.
and then dribble it down the middle, which is that helped. It happened very seldom. I mean, you really weren't getting onside kicks normally, but now, unless you're the daggone Cowboys and do that watermelon kick where the ball's on the ground and you just kind of squib it down. I don't know what the crap that is, but it
It
was
makes
not
it
a
so
successful
hard to be
play.
successful at them because it's
Right.
got to go so far. Your team can't touch it first.
Yeah.
It turns
Yeah.
into now. I think it's kind of interesting because they've been talking. I read a little bit about this. Like they've been bringing over rugby players
Mm-hmm.
from overseas, like Australia and New Zealand, and bringing them
Yeah.
in, and they're specifically working on these special teams slash onside scrum type stuff, and those guys are
Mm-hmm.
perfect for it because that's what they do in rugby. But
Mm-hmm.
so the new thought with the rules committee is they're discussing whether in that situation it would be a 4th and 15 or a 4th and 20
Hmm.
instead of an onside kick. So kind of like what college does.
Yeah. That's interesting to be a fourth and.
Yeah, but then it becomes strategy as
Mm-hmm.
far as the defense is concerned, like, or the offense. Like, do they set this up so they'll immediately get a personal foul because then it'll be automatic first down?
Hmm. But can you do that?
Well, I think that's going to be the discussions that the rules committee is going to have. And as always with the rules committee, any of this stuff, it has to go in front of the owners committee also. And it has to be approved by, I think it's like 75%. So like
Right.
29 out of the 34 teams have to agree to it.
Yeah.
So,
And I don't know if it moves the needle or not. Like it's not effective as much as it ever was.
yeah.
And I think you and I had this conversation last year where it just seems like they're kind of moving away from it, in it with the potential implementation of, doing a 4th and 15 or having the option that
Mhm.
is kind of showing you that they're definitely moving away because that's another short yardage car crash. I mean, you're 10 yards apart and it's just,
Mhm.
you know what I
Yep.
mean? And to your point about, the rugby players, I mean, and we'll talk about this. We talked about it on the other show. The tush push, the Eagles, yeah, some of their linemen are rugby players, and that's one of the things that a lot of people aren't looking at with the tush push is that they got guys that do this, and they've built themselves their careers doing this type of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. If
makes
you're
different.
not familiar with rugby, just watch a couple of like highlights
Watch a
of it,
scrum.
and then them scrumming, and literally there's guys that their whole job is literally to get their shoulders and their head underneath somebody and shove them forward. That's it. And
It's
that's the
it's
push
literally a
push.
game. Yeah, it's literally a game of the tush push. That's
Yeah.
what rugby is. It's just the
Yeah.
tush
No,
push, and then
there's
somebody breaks away.
yeah.
I mean,
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what some of these committees, and I want to see like the electric eye thing. I want to see like how that's implemented and
oh
stuff,
yeah,
and like
oh
is
yeah.
that also going to cover like where the refs set the ball?
Hmm.
Are they going to be like if they put it does the team, because like now the teams can say no, you put it in the wrong place, and
Hmm.
so they review it, or is that going to come away if the refs are only setting it where the eagle eye says it's supposed to be set? So
And
yeah.
then you also got to think, is each team now going to have a guy that's like in New York? You know what I mean? How much is New York going to be involved as far as reviewing? Because it's all dependent on these reviews and what
Well,
they're saying.
that's the one thing is that, at least as I understand it, the footage that is sent to New York is the same footage that ends up going to the teams during the game. So when
Okay.
they're reviewing it, our guys can review it too. Now, the
Right.
initial ones where they're deciding whether they want to review it, yeah, that's stadium footage. That's
Hmm.
right there. So I think if they do go to this and everything, they're gonna have to feed that stuff to them,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it will probably just have to be it's going to go the way I think it's going to kind of go the way the baseball did when they
Hmm.
brought in
I can see that happening.
the hitter's box. And I still bitch about that thing because I'm like,
Hmm.
how
Apparently, you bitch about a
how
lot of things in baseball. The pitch clock, the hitter's box, instant replay, all of it. But that's going to be interesting because I do see that pattern happening. Us kind of going, kind of like what they did in baseball, where they're kind of automating, the cameras,
they're
and we already
automating parts of it but not
right,
taking complete.
not
I
everything out.
Yeah, I mean, measuring whether it's 10 yards, that should be easy.
Hmm.
And it's not, because if you think about it, when the play ends, they put you take the ball from whatever player you had, unless the ball's on the ground, then you're taking it and putting it in a position. Well,
Hmm.
if the ref isn't putting it in the right position, I mean, we've seen games that like this much of a link will end a game. Well, if
Hmm.
you move that ball just slightly this way or that way or forward or back, that's that amount of thing. So I like the idea of having, because they're going to know, the computer's going to be able to see exactly where that ball
Where that
was,
line is,
and they're
right?
going to be able to find that line immediately 10 yards based on
Yeah.
where it was. I don't think we'll see the end of the chains on the side, because I think that's that's a visual representation
Right.
for the
Right.
players to know where they need to get to.
Yeah.
But if 10 yards was in, it's going to be easy. And then that's the thing. Then the Bills might have actually made it into the
But
Super
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, then the Bills probably one of the ones pushing for this after the fact because knowing where that ball is supposed to be spotted and what's the yard mark and all that stuff, like
Bowl.
you said, could have potentially cost them a shot at going
Yeah.
to the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
this is gonna be something that we're definitely gonna be looking at. And look, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of changes and certain rule changes that we're gonna discuss. Like we talked about the roughing the kicker, roughing the passer is something that potentially is huge and again it goes to your interpretation. A lot of people, we have an interpretation of seeing it, but we're seeing it most times in fast pace and then in slow motion right back to back because we're watching on TV as to where the actual refs are doing it strictly with their eyes and just on their interpretation, and it's from different angles. A lot of times we don't understand it because a ref is over here throwing a flag and he's behind, but then there's a guy on the other side that's looking at it and sees there's no infraction, so he didn't throw the flag. But
Right.
it's you really don't know because we want to keep that human aspect to it, but we also want to nail down getting these things right so it doesn't cost the team a shot at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the beauty. I do like how the NFL does that they have multiple refs in different areas because you
Yep.
get a different look at something. And so the baseball kind of does it too. Like you have the umpire behind the plate. Well, he can't always see if they swung.
Yeah.
Like, because the rule, you can only swing so
Yeah.
far,
It
and
goes all the way through.
so
Yeah.
that's why they go to the sides to check,
Yeah.
and that's why the guy's like yes or no, because he has a better angle at it. So that's the thing. It's like, don't get upset that they picked up the flag. They picked up the flag because they figured out that guy's view wasn't as good as that guy's view.
Right.
So but it's hard. I mean, fans
It is.
get into. The word fan comes from the term fanatic.
Fanatic. Absolutely. Yep. And that's
And
what we all are.
That person in the bar.
That's what we all are. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I literally, everybody hits me up and always says, "Oh, the biggest point in the season for Washington was that Hail Mary." I literally got so mad with some other Washington fans pregame on how this game was going to play and Caleb and JD5 and all this stuff that I worked myself up to such a tizzy that I took a nap pregame, slept through the entire game. And I had like people like Andrew Gobert messaging me, people calling me, "Oh my God, did you see that? Did you see that?" And I'm waking up like, what? I missed the whole game, but I'm kind of glad I missed it because that one was a back and forth, and it came down to that Hail Mary. So I don't know if my heart could have handled that one. So it shall be interesting.
It literally was the epitome of Hail Mary. It was like,
yeah.
Okay, right, it's ours.
Right, exactly. Like that meme of the kid who's like, "Oh, okay. I work with that. I like that.
I can take that. Well, I didn't do anything to do this. The guy delivered it into my hands, but okay."
So beautiful. So Tyreek Stevenson, thank you, sir. Thank you for talking trash and tapping the ball to us. But look, we got to go ahead and get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Let's Talk Football breaking news, first episode of season 2. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This offseason is going to be long. We got free agency that we're going to continually be talking about, the new moves, new rules. We're going to lead up into the draft, look at some of that stuff, and also kind of focus a little bit on our teams, see what direction we're going, kind of look back at what happened last year and how we can improve on that. Both having rookie quarterbacks, so Tina and I are kind of both in the same boat. So it's going to be interesting.
Need to determine if we're going to be Stroud this year.
Right. Oh, my God. That sophomore slump. I'm not looking forward to it.
Sophomore slump, and he still made the playoffs. I don't have a problem with that.
Exactly. Oh, what is going on? Henny said Luna says hello. What's up, Luna? Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, Dinklage, give her an extra bone from me.
So shout out to all you that took a minute and watched us. I know Janae was here, Anthony, LG Prize, appreciate you joining us tonight. Nicholas watched us for a little bit. Appreciate you guys tuning in. taking the time to join us. We will definitely be back this fall with all the news and notes for Let's Talk Breaking News. So, for my co-host, Tina Winter, it is your boy, Sean Spencer. We will see you next time. Stay tuned. Tomorrow night, Washington Football Weekly is back because Washington is making moves on moves on moves. And I'm kind of excited about it. But we'll see. We'll see. We always do this in the offseason, so we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Bye,
Peace,
everyone. Bye-bye.
We'll see y'all next time. All right. And
Washington had no hesitation in this offseason. They hired Bob Myers, the special consultant.
They're taking advantage of the fact that players and celebrities are public figures.